Well, speaking of shameful, I think what S.E. Cupp is doing is pretty shameful by comparing Donald Trump to a truther. And those people are psychotic lunatics that blame the United States for 9/11.
Jeb Bush now responding to Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump's latest controversial comments about 9/11. Just about 30 minutes ago, he tweeted, "At Donald Trump's absurd comments again raise questions on whether he possesses the judgment to be president." The tweet also included a link to a 2-minute ad criticizing Trump. Here's part of it.
Who do you talk to for military advice right now?
Well, I watch the shows. I mean, I really see a lot of great, when you watch your show and all of the other shows.
He has said publicly that he watches cable news, and that's one of the ways that he bones up on our national security.
Trump says he, quote, always felt that I was in the military, despite never serving in the military, and draft deferments during Vietnam.
There's nobody bigger or better at the military than I am.
Donald Trump said Senator John McCain is not a war hero.
He's not a war hero. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
Well, Trump spoke about President George W. Bush and the 9/11 terror attacks in an interview with Bloomberg. Watch.
When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want. The World Trade Center came down during his time. If you look
Hold
at
on,
Sandy Hook,
you can't blame George Bush for that.
He was president, okay? Don't blame him or don't blame him, but he was president. The World Trade Center came down during his reign.
After that, Jeb Bush fired back, tweeting how pathetic for Donald Trump to criticize the president for 9/11. "We were attacked and my brother kept us safe." CNN's Chris Freites in Washington with more on what happened next.
You know, Poppy, he hasn't had anything to say today, and that's becoming part of a pattern that for once, Trump has been pretty quiet. Here's how he handled questions from our own MJ Lee after a campaign rally last night.
Don't you want to comment about the 9/11 comment, sir? Mr. Trump, can we get reaction to Jeb Bush about your 9/11 comment, please? Jeb Bush criticized you. Did you have a comment on the 9/11 comments? Sir, would you like to clarify your 9/11 comments that Jeb Bush is calling out? We've all asked you a few times. Sir, could you please answer us? Sir, do you have a comment on Jeb Bush? Jeb Bush!
So a shockingly quiet Donald Trump there. He regularly takes questions from reporters on the campaign trail, so it was a little unusual for him to walk away without saying anything. But, never fear, this being Donald Trump, he wasn't done. A few minutes later, he took to Twitter, and his first tweet was aimed at Jeb Bush saying, quote, "At the debate, you said your brother kept us safe. I wanted to be nice, and I did not mention a World Trade Center came down during his watch, 9/11. Then he tweeted, "No, Jeb Bush, you're pathetic for saying nothing happened during your brother's term when the World Trade Center was attacked and came down." That last tweet, Poppy, had a kind of schoolyard, "I know you are, but what am I" feel to it, real tit for tat. But it's worth pointing out that Bush had criticized Trump yesterday, saying he had no idea what kind of leader Trump would be because all Trump does is talk about himself and not how he would actually lead. And it's important to remember, Poppy, this Twitter feud, it's been going on between Bush and Trump for months. Trump has hit Bush on immigration, retweeted messages calling Bush crazy, and has calling on him to stop, quote, speaking Mexican. Bush, of course, speaks Spanish. So this is just the latest chapter in a long-running feud. But the fact that Trump took to Twitter instead of answering reporters' questions, it seems to indicate that he knows he hit a nerve here. 9/11 has been largely off limits as a political issue, and Trump's criticisms of George W. Bush could alienate those voters that he's trying to win. On Friday, a New York congressman made this point, saying Trump's argument sounded a lot like a Michael Moore talking point. Moore, of course, is a liberal and very outspoken critic of George W. Bush, so that's not the kind of criticism Trump wants in a Republican primary, especially as opponents like Jeb Bush try to paint him as a New York City liberal and not some kind of rock-riv conservative. Poppy?
Chris, thank you very much.
All right, I want to say a little something about this, about Donald Trump and 9/11 and Bush and Jebby. And the thing is that Donald Trump, he should talk a whole lot more about 9/11. 9/11 is where all of this country's troubles really began. because that's when the war profiteers and the military-industrial complex took all of our treasures and started destroying our good name around the world. Okay, and if you care, there's so many people that if you want to get people that aren't involved, Donald, Mr. Trump, whatever, if you want to get people that are not involved in politics at all, start talking more about 9/11. Start talking about, and the thing is any response to Jeb Bush on this, any response to Jeb Bush, every single tweet you send to Jeb Bush from this point forward should be PNAC, PNAC, Project for a New American Century. That should be your entire response to Jeb Bush. And he will shut the fuck up. I bet you he blocks you from his Twitter account. Because that's the kind of fucking giant piece of garbage he is. And if you really want to hit him hard, that's how you do it. Project for a New American Century. That's all you have to say in your response to Jeb Bush. Because he signed that months before his brother became president. And in that document it said, if we could only have a Pearl Harbor style event, then we would be able to open war on two fronts, and we'll be able to profiteer for generations to come. Okay, and that's the whole thing. That's who these people are. Just a bunch of war profiteers. But 9/11, please, Mr. Trump, please talk about 9/11 more if you really want to get more people. If you want to see an overwhelming wave of support for Mr. Trump, talk about 9/11. I guarantee it. These people in the media, they're saying shit like, oh, that's a third rail. You can't say, you can't talk about 9/11. And that's the problem, is that nobody will talk about it. And all Americans, this is what fucked our world. Okay, please, Mr. Trump, talk more about 9/11. All of you people, please tweet Donald Trump and say, Mr. Trump, please talk more about 9/11. Every single American should tweet Donald Trump and say, please, Mr. Trump, talk more about 9/11. Over and over and over again. Millions of you. Please, Mr. Trump. Okay, and these people are saying, oh, it's a third rail. Do you know what third rail means? That means if you touch it, you're going to get burned by 50,000 volts of electricity. You can't even touch that subject. It's taboo. That's who our media is. They refuse to talk about 9/11. And then this stupid Bloomberg cow that's interviewing him is like, oh, you can't blame George Bush for 9/11. That's not right. Oh, okay, so we don't have the buck stops here kind of leadership anymore. There's nobody responsible. Nobody's ever responsible. How come the media over and over again hit George Bush with, was there a daily presidential briefing that said bin Laden determined to attack inside the U.S.? Was that a briefing? And what was your response to that briefing? Okay, you covered your ass. Remember, we heard this shit over and over and over again. The media wanted to point out that he knew something was going to happen. Okay? And not that I believe any of this garbage. Okay? It's all a big fucking fairy tale. 19 Arabs. So we need to go attack Afghanistan. Come on, you guys. Please contact Donald Trump. Let him know. Talk more about 9/11. Please talk more about 9/11. Third rail. Bush. Can't blame Bush. Yeah, that was about it. So, And you know what else, Donald? You need to play some Immortal Technique at your fucking rallies, because that really rocked their world. Bush brought down the towers. You know what I'm saying? Play that at your rallies. That will blow the media's mind. Tell the truth. Thank you all. Wednesday, this war is going to end. Till that day, stay cool.
And we are, as I said, awaiting Donald Trump to take to that podium for his live comments, which we will be taking. Anticipate that starting any minute. While we're waiting, I want to go to our panel. Our political commentators, S.E. Cupp and Hillary Rosen, join me. Also, Donald Trump supporter and the former president of Trump Productions, Andy Dean. Okay, good to have all of you with me. I appreciate it. So let's talk about the day's big controversy. I want to start there. It actually wasn't between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It was between Donald Trump and Jeb Bush. Trump saying George W. Bush was president during 9/11. It was, you know, the way he phrased it, you have to use the word implying, but he was saying George W. Bush was responsible. Jeb Bush responding on Twitter, calling Trump, quote, pathetic. S.E., what do you say?
I think pathetic is apt. You know, whether you leave the answer hanging as Trump did or not, or you fill it in explicitly like other truthers have, I think the suggestion that somehow George W. Bush was to blame or is responsible for a horrific tragedy, one that I, lived through in Manhattan, is really, really offensive and kind of cheap, especially if you're not going to go on to explain what you mean by that or offer up specific policy proposals, for example, that you would implement as president to thwart future attacks like that. To just sort of drop that and then move on, I think is really kind of shameful.
Andy?
Well, speaking of shameful, I think what S.E. Cupp is doing is pretty shameful by comparing Donald Trump to a truther, and those people are psychotic lunatics that blame the United States for 9/11. Donald Trump did no such thing. He said blame, don't blame. He kind of shrugged his shoulders, and then he moved to a different topic.
Yes,
we all know
epically
that when it
courageous,
comes
Andy.
to...
That's epically courageous, what he did.
Okay, well, you're not making any sense right now. The point is this, is that Bill Clinton was the one who back in 1998 had a chance to kill Osama bin Laden and didn't do it. So if asked between G.W. Bush and Bill Clinton who deserves more blame, the answer is Bill Clinton.
Hillary?
You know, this is, I think, part of Donald Trump's problem. And our problem is that the rules don't apply to Donald Trump. But his problem is that he doesn't seem to really care about this country the way he talks about caring. The most poignant moment for me after those 9/11 attacks were when Al Gore, went out and said, George Bush is my president. Like, the country came together. That was a really important moment. People weren't about blaming George Bush. Now, me and a lot of other people didn't like how he ended up responding to the attacks. We didn't like the invasion in Iraq and other things. But that doesn't mean that he deserved the blame for the attack in the first place. And I think Trump's sort of cavalier way that he talks about major events in this country is just really offensive.
All right, well, we're just going to briefly hit pause in this conversation. All of you, please stay with me. We're going to squeeze in a brief commercial break here.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.